statistically speaking, people fear public speaking more than death. Impromptu speaking is actually not impromptu speaking. It is well-rehearsed speaking. I stood up to give my speech and I changed my thought pattern. And I said, I am going to show you why I deserve to be here and why I am going to give you the best speech that you have heard all day. But I challenge you to think about what if you sharing your message could help one other person and help make an impact on their life. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all here to do, is to help make an impact and to make the world a better place? The world thinks a lot more about themselves than they do about you. And when we learn that people aren't really thinking about judging us as much as we judge ourselves, that helps us overcome some of those nerves.
Welcome to Stories and Stanza, a weekly podcast bringing you real stories from creators and speakers around the world. Okay. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to Stories and Stanza.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
I'm looking forward to our chat today. So, I have this series called Fail With Me, in which I try to talk about failure and try to untangle the emotional stigmas related to failure. And I have explored that from multiple perspectives with my guests. So, the first thing I wanted to hear from you is, as our guest speaker, how do you relate to it?
I love the topic of your podcast. I think it's a wonderful idea to not just celebrate successes, but to acknowledge that there are a lot of failures that get us to where we are. And I am an award-winning public speaking coach, but I did not roll out of bed and become that one day. In fact, there were a lot of steps along the way that got me there. My first experience with public speaking was probably similar to many of your viewers in that I didn't like public speaking. In fact, statistically speaking, people fear public speaking more than death. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld, a comedian here in the States, has a skit that says that if you are ever at a funeral, it's better to be the one in the casket than the one giving the eulogy. And that's often how a lot of people feel. And that's exactly how I felt about giving speeches. And so, how did I go from those feelings to becoming an award-winning speaker and coaching people to give speeches? Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And a family friend who was an attorney said that if you want to be a good attorney, you should be good at speaking. And the thought of giving a speech made me want to get sick, but I wanted to be a good attorney. And he suggested I join this competitive speech and debate team. And so I did. And I can vividly remember my very first speech. It was an impromptu speech. And I was supposed to prepare for 2 minutes and speak for 5. I prepared for 15 minutes and spoke for about 30 seconds. And the butterflies were not flying in formation. My face was flushed. My hands were sweaty. It was not a great speech at all. And there was more ums and uhs than actual words in the speech itself. And I got through it, and I was determined to be a good attorney. And so I kept working at it, and I followed my coach's advice, and I learned how to get over those nerves, how to conquer the boogeyman in the brain that tells you you can't do this, what makes you think that you have anything important to say. And I learned how to construct good speech and how to give an impromptu speech. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Impromptu speaking is actually not impromptu speaking. It is well-rehearsed speaking. So even improv, they spend time thinking about what the sketch might be or what the skit might be. And same with impromptu. You think about what questions you might get asked or what stories you might tell so that you're ready to give those answers. And so I would follow my coach's advice and I would practice. And I can vividly remember my mom yelling upstairs, "Time to come down for dinner, stop practicing." And I'd say, "Just 5 more minutes, Mom, I'm almost done." And I kept working on it and went on to win awards at the state level and then at the national level. And now I work with clients to win awards for their speaking as well.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And this particular show, I try to, as I said, like approach it from different perspectives. And a lot of people go through this fear of speaking. And I'm really looking forward to some of the valuable advice from yourself. And it can possibly give the listeners, something to relate to and give them a path of improvement and overcoming that fear. So, on that note, I want to hear from you as to how did you overcome your fear or nervousness into speaking.
So I had followed my coach's advice and was crafting speeches, and I would take first place in these competitions and I would get until I get to the final round. And I'd get to the final round and I would take sixth place. And this was happening again and again. And one tournament, I was just tired of it. And I have to ask, are you a competitive person?
I used to be, probably not so much right now.
Well, I'm a very competitive person. And in this particular event, it was a limited preparation event about current events. And I was competing against all boys. And I was tired of letting the boys win. And I decided that that was not going to happen. And so when what was happening is I would stand up to give my speech and when I was in the final round and I would think, oh, they're all great speakers. They're all better speakers than me. What right do I have to be up here? How do I deserve to be here? And it would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But that one tournament where I was tired of letting the boys win and tired of taking last place, I stood up to give my speech and I changed my thought pattern. And I said, I am going to show you why I deserve to be here and why I am going to give you the best speech that you have heard all day. And by changing that thought pattern, that became the self-fulfilling prophecy. And I started winning these tournaments. And so when it comes to giving speeches and to overcoming nervousness, the first thing you have to do is think about the thought process and the stories that you're telling yourself. If you're telling yourself that I can't do this, why are people listening to me? Then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. But if you tell yourself that I deserve to be up here and I know what I'm talking about, then that becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy. So the first thing is to think about your thought process. There's one quote that I absolutely love, and it says, "What if I fail? Oh, but what if you fly?" And so when you start to think about those negative thoughts, just picture a big red stop sign coming in front of your face and flip those negative thoughts on their head. So that is one thing that helped me. Another great exercise to help calm those nerves is to help calm the parasympathetic nervous system. So before we try anything new, it's normal human nature to feel a little bit nervous about it. But to help us not feel nervous about it, there's this little exercise that I like to work with my clients. And because I like your audience, I'll tell them as well. And it helps calm your parasympathetic nervous system. And it's the 5 by 5 by 5 method. So you breathe in for the count of 5, you hold it for the count of 5, you exhale for the count of 5, and you hold it, and you do that 5 times. And I tell this to my clients, and they're like, well, that's breathing. I do that every day. This is not a revolutionary concept. And then they actually try it and come back and say, oh my goodness, this totally works. And so it does calm that parasympathetic nervous system. It also shifts your focus from that spiral in your head of, oh, I don't really want to do this. What have I gotten myself into? To your breathing, and it kind of resets all of that. And so those are a couple of techniques to help.
This reminds me something my dad said when I was giving my first job interview about 20 odd years ago. And he kind of similarly said, like, try to breathe in from one side of your nose, one nostril, and then breathe out from the other one. Have a count of three and reverse that. And then that would bring back the connection with your body and your mind, and you should be at ease with speaking and discussions and such things. And uh, I mean, I definitely had a fear of speaking at some stage, and what you rightly said is being aware and focusing on that presentation, it slowly changes things. Definitely. Uh, you
Did that help? Did that exercise from
it
your
it
dad
it
help?
it it, it helped, and I still practice it. And sometimes I do technical presentations here in Melbourne. So it's like guest panels and sort of conference speaking, etc. It's not my job, but sometimes I'm invited as a speaker, and I deeply enjoy it. And I look back and I see that I used to be afraid of this, and now I do it so well. And then, I mean, it creates an impact as well, like how you're speaking. If you are a good speaker, you hear that from people. So when I get recognized, oh, you gave a speech on this last year. I said, yes, I was here on this. So I really like that. And that breathing exercise, it reminded me of my own story. Thank you for that. You told me that you have a book on this, and can I hear about the book, what it is called, and how? Of course, I will share the link in our episode, but can you tell our listeners about it?
It is called Seven Steps to Kicking Your Public Speaking Anxiety to the Curb, and it has seven actionable steps. It's an ebook on how to kick your public speaking anxiety to the curb. So it has this 5 by 5 exercise in it as well. And the whole goal is to, if you can conquer your speech anxiety, I fully believe that we all have a message inside of us that we want to share and that we feel called to share. And sometimes the boogeyman in our brain gets the better of us and we want to do what's comfortable, and that's human nature. But I challenge you to think about what if you sharing your message could help one other person and help make an impact on their life. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all here to do, is to help make an impact and to make the world a better place. And so if you can help conquer that speech anxiety and share your message, then you can help live out what your message is and your goal is to be here on this earth. So I have written it with actionable tips because I feel like we live in a fast-paced, busy world. And so it has all kinds of easy things that you can do to help you with your speech anxiety.
Thank you so much. And for our listeners, there will be a link to the book so they can get it and get to know about these methods. And I'm sure it would benefit some people who are struggling with speech anxiety. Uh, on that note, you are a coach as well on this. So what do you think are the reasons why we get nervous before speaking?
So that comes down to human nature and how we're genetically predisposed. So if you think back into caveman and our prehistoric ancestors, when we lived back in the days of cavemen, being in a group meant survival. If you were in a group, you were going to be able to hunt the buffalo and live and all of those things. Well, if you're giving a speech, you're intentionally ostracizing yourself or separating yourself from the group. And so back in our prehistoric days, if you were separated from the group, you weren't going to survive. You can't hunt a buffalo by yourself. That's just not going to work out. And so that gets back to our prehistoric ancestor days, but it also gets into our fear of being judged. So you're separated from the group, and now all of a sudden these fears of being judged kick in. And well, what will they think of me? Am I enough? Will I measure up? And so I think that's where these fears originate. I would challenge you to again flip these fears on their head and think instead of, am I going to measure up? Because your brain is just like a computer program. It will work the way that you program it to. And so if you program it to think positive thoughts, you'll get positive responses out of it. And so instead of thinking, am I enough? Will I measure up? Instead, think, I am enough. I have a message to share, and I am excited to share that message. Oftentimes, we focus on the audience and we see a whole sea of faces, and it can be all these beady little eyes staring at us, and that can feel overwhelming. But I encourage clients to focus on one person in the audience. Share your message to one person in the audience and communicate to that person. And that will take the overwhelm out of that situation.
Thank you for explaining that and that that particular tip. I had a similar sort of experience, and I'm just looking back to my university days when we had to talk about our projects and things, and I used to get very nervous. And then uh, when I started working and I had to speak in an auditorium about 500 people, and I was really nervous. So I got a very important suggestion from one of the seniors there, is that when you are up there on stage and you're trying to speak or you're beginning your speech, there is no connection between the speaker and the audience. And when you start speaking, when you start engaging, then that connection starts forming. So instead of in the beginning being afraid that I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm not going to be able to more presentable, that sort of fear taking over, we need to think that the connection is not there yet. It will build based on how I start presenting, and that takes a couple of minutes. So use those minutes to get people to engage into the speech. And I think that perspective was very important. So I can definitely relate to what you suggested, making that connection with one person in the audience. That's really fantastic. Uh,
Yeah, I
so
think that's great advice from your colleague to make that connection with your audience as well. And I think when you stand up to give your speech, if you, stand at the podium or wherever you're standing up and you take a minute and look at the crowd and you smile and you say your first three words looking at your audience. And then if you need to look down at your notes, that's fine. But if you can memorize at least the first three words of your speech, then it gives you that connection with your audience. And then they know that you're there to give the speech with them as well. And so, to your point of establishing that connection, when you look at them in the eye, that is how you can establish that connection. And I think one of the things that people get nervous about when they give their speech is, what if I make a mistake and what if I mess up? But the thing is, there's two things. One, the audience doesn't know what you're going to say. And so if you make a mistake, the only way they're going to know that you made a mistake is if you say, oh no, I messed up. Well, then of course they're going to know you messed up. But if you just keep right on going, they're not going to know anything. And so you can take that weight right off your shoulders. But second, they're not connected to your nerve endings. And so if you're feeling nervous, if you pretend to be confident, fake confidence and real confidence look the same. They even smell the same. And so the audience isn't going to know that you're nervous unless you tell them that you're nervous, which I do not suggest you tell them that you're nervous. I just suggest that you pretend to be confident and they will be none the wiser.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, and uh, as I said, I feel very confident about when I'm doing the technical presentations, but I was not so much about uh, putting my creative voice out there, which is this podcast is about. And I thought about creating a podcast and at least waited for 1 to 2 years to be actually get started. And then I started getting invitations to appear into poetry readings and things. And then I felt that it's basically the same. It's whether I'm following a creative pursuit or I'm doing a technical presentation. Basically, I'm doing this kind of same practice. It's just the stream is different. And then I overcome that fear and then uh, started this podcast. I mean, I've started only this year, and so far I've been doing great. And I'm really enjoying these connections with my guests. And every time I speak to them, I feel that I get nourished and I have something to take on board and bring that into my creativity and my writing. And possibly in that way, we are spreading awareness with many who are interested in exploring that. So as you said in the beginning, right, that when you speak, you kind of help somebody who is in the same situation, and then that makes it worth it. Yeah. So and uh, you have a coaching business about speaking, and I wanted to hear from you on that note as to where do you think our awareness lack, and how do you help people in your coaching?
So I work with clients one-on-one and I help them with overcoming their nerves. I also help them write their speeches and I can help them with their PowerPoints as well. And so they often come to me with an idea, or at least I have to give a speech, and I can help them with the brainstorming process and then the writing down to a fully formed, finished, polished speech, and that is ready to give. And it is very rewarding watching clients step into that confidence and find their voice and find their power and share their message with the world. And when they finish their speech and come back and tell me all about how the audience was able to get so much out of their talk, and the audience wouldn't have been able to say those things had they not been brave enough to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm going to give this speech. And so that is what I do for my one-on-one coaching. I also have a digital course if people would like to do a kind of do-it-yourself program that has the same same idea, starts with a idea for a speech all the way through a finished product. And so both of those are options as well.
Thank you. And I guess it's like uh, a lot of people who are maybe good with the content that they are about to present. It's that guidance that they need, turning things into a good presentation. We've seen a lot of presentations where the content is really good, but the presentation not so much, and the speech not so much. Or in some cases, this speech may be really good, but then what you're talking about is not engaging enough, and then you do not build that relationship with the content. So I think that it's a two-way thing, that you need to look at what you're presenting and how you're presenting. From your coaching and from your guiding people on this, can you share something that you have observed with your clients without, of course, sharing any individual details, like any patterns that you think would help the listeners?
So, oftentimes people jump right into the writing process and skip the brainstorming process. And the brainstorming process, I would argue, is one of the most foundational aspects of writing a speech. It's like building a house without having a foundation. The house is going to crumble, it's just not going to work out that well. And so when you take a step back and you build the proper foundation and you brainstorm it, there's all these ideas and things that you didn't initially think of to put to your speech that make your speech more cohesive, that help you get to the time limit that you need to, that also make your speech make more sense. And so when we take a step back and focus on the brainstorming process, I like to use this idea bubble where you put the topic for your speech in the middle and then you just kind of mental vomit. So anything that comes to mind, you write it on the sheet of paper and you circle ideas that are similar and then kind of highlight them with a similar color. And then I encourage you to use an extended outline version. And so that's just a much more linear, easier way instead of trying to plug things into an already partially written speech that clients have told me helps take the overwhelm out of the process. You are already perhaps picturing standing up on stage and everybody staring at you and what's this going to look like. If we can go back to square one and get all of the ideas out because you've been asked to give a speech because you have great ideas to share, let's just get those out on paper. That is one of the great ways to help take some of that overwhelm out of the speech writing process.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And this is just an idea. So a lot of people, I notice that they want to do this podcasting or content creation, and then they lack that confidence. They have that fear, or they don't have that guidance. Do you think that they can reach out to you if somebody asks me, can I point them in your direction? Do you think that that would be a new area for you to explore?
I would love that. Yes, I would be honored.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Uh, yeah, I think I have covered most of the things that I had in mind for our discussions. So, just to conclude our chat today, what would you say to someone who is feeling challenged to, to be out there, to speak up, and have that overwhelming hesitation? What would you say to that person?
I would say to feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to work with them. I have some other ideas that we didn't get the chance to chat with today to help get to the root of what's causing that and take the power out of that. But I would also say that the world thinks a lot more about themselves than they do about you. And when we learn that people aren't really thinking about judging us as much as we judge ourselves, that helps us overcome some of those nerves. And if you keep having this nagging feeling in the back of your mind of, I have this message to share, I really want to talk about this, but can I do it? I don't know. Take a look at some of the tips that I have in my ebook and start flipping those ideas on their head. And instead of thinking, I don't know if this is going to work, start thinking, what if it does? And you will be surprised with the results.
Uh, Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Stories and Stanza and sharing your insights in this spectrum. And I'm sure that the listeners will be benefited by your wisdom. And of course, I'll share all the details if they want to reach out to you, so where they can find the ebook, etc. So audience would be benefited by it as well. Thank you once
Well,
again.
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.